This is story time again. I go on about it, eh? It's lovely. The only thing that exists, story. And nothing can prove story doesn't exist. Because story is the only thing you can't escape. Let me say that one again. Story is the only thing you can't escape. Like you can imagine existence. You can imagine non-existence. You can imagine experience, and you can imagine non-experience. But you can not imagine or express or describe non-story. You can't imagine or express non-story without creating a story about non-story. So you can't imagine a non-story without creating a story about non-story. Look, nothing is like this. There is nothing like this. Nothing else is this inescapable. Nothing. You can't get outside of it. Look, try it. It's funny. Try and get outside a story. You're already inside the only thing that exists. And the name of that thing is story. It's really simple. I keep telling you, it's really simple. It's really ordinary. It's everything is what the only thing that can be, and that is story. Look, I can say it this way. Story is the only thing that can contain its own negative thing, like its own non-existence. So story is the only thing that can contain its own non-existence. But here's the crux of it. Without ceasing to exist. So story is the only thing that can contain its own non-existence without ceasing to exist. Nothing else in reality has this property. Nothing else in reality is able to do this. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's deep, and it doesn't get any deeper than itself. No deeper than the story. No deeper than story. You can't dig your way out, and you can't dig your way in, because you are already in and out and everywhere, because it's the only thing that exists. Story. It's so hard to explain. It's because the explanation is it. That's the thing, isn't it? It's so hard to explain. You could say and this is a story, but it's like you see that you never see things. You only ever see story about things. But that's a story, so I don't know. That's just it's like you see that you never see things you only ever see story about things. Oh, I don't know. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It's all story. But I reckon that it could be, it's never going to be close. It's never going to be near it because it can't be more closer than the story. The only thing that exists, story. So, like to say that you never see things, you only see story about things. It's kind of like that because the moment you look around, it's a story that appears. So you don't really see the things, you only ever see the story about things. Waffle on, just waffling on, but that's, I don't know, that's pretty close to how it could be described, and story is describing it as best as it can because it is just being itself. So what? Whatever. I think I think one of the things it can't be anything outside story. That's the problem. And that's not a problem. It's actually a stupid word to say that, really. It's not a problem because it can't be anything else but story. But I think what's like, imagine the most powerful person in the world who's controlling, say, could control everything in the world. At some point, they would be asleep, right? So at some point they must rest, and I don't know, maybe not, but who knows? Maybe it's a group. Let's call it a group of people who are controlling everything in the world. Let's say there's this group of people that are controlling everything in the world, but at some point they would sleep, right? And at that moment of sleep, there would be a moment where they're awake, and that's when we could use this term awake. So we awaken, and that's when there's the moment of awakening, what is the very first thing that appears? Doesn't matter if you are powerful and whether you are poor or whether you are anybody. There's a point where you're asleep and you don't see something, and that's just a story. But we can talk because story is talking and it's storytelling right now. There's a point where there's an awakening, and that moment of awakening, the only thing that appears is story. Because I keep saying it, the only thing that exists, story, and nothing can prove story doesn't exist. So I can say it the other way. Nothing can prove story doesn't exist, and the only thing that exists, story. Now, you can dream of being something or anything. We do that. This is what we talk about. This is the dream time, okay? Where we talk about that dream that we had that was real bizarre and weird. But there are moments when we are totally not awake and people are not seeing a story, isn't there? And that's a story. So we'll talk about the moment, still a story. Remember, this is still story. So the only thing that exists, story. So there's no non-story. There's no non-story. To say there's a moment when you're asleep and everyone's not aware of what's going on, that's still story, right? But think of the very person that you would assume would have some very good credentials and very good abilities to do stuff which requires a great deal of intelligence. There's always going to be the moment where they are asleep. But the moment they awaken, when they wake up, what do they wake up to? The only thing that exists. Story. And if you don't wake up, there's no story, is there? But someone can tell a story about you. Oh, they didn't wake up. They're asleep. And we can story about them as they can story about us, because it's all story. Nothing else is it's the only thing that exists, story. I know I go on and on about it, but I'm very well capable. I'm very well, let's say, capable of storytelling, aren't I? Aren't you? Of course you are. Because that's all that exists, is the story. You see? Now you're going to say, oh, no, there's a body that exists. But you're using story. You don't have to tell me a body exists. You don't have to tell yourself a body exists. The body doesn't need a story, does it, to exist? If we are going to use the story of existence right at this moment. We don't need to look up to the clouds and say, those clouds exist. Those clouds don't need the story to exist. They are the story of the existence of clouds. It's the only thing that exists, and nothing can prove a story doesn't exist. And the reason I go on about it is everything that's happening has to be something that only exists. Because in 1,000 million years from now, if there is time, because that could be a story, well, that is a story, but it doesn't matter, we won't go down that rabbit hole. In 1,000 million years' time, what would be the only thing that only ever exists? We could go backwards, like they talk about the Big Bang and when there was, what, nothing? And isn't saying there's nothing a story? Again, the only thing that exists, even back then, if we're going to talk about it like that, because it's funny to talk about it now like that, but even if we talk about that, oh, there's a Big Bang and something created something. Again, the only thing that exists was story, or is story, isn't it? Oh dear. And I say that a lot. Oh dear. I listen back sometimes to what I say and I hear the word, oh dear. And I think, why are you saying that for? Oh, it doesn't matter. So just going back to how I started off, you can have existence and you can have non-existence. You can have an experience and you can have a non-experience. But you can't have non-story. So what it means is basically the most valuable thing that you can have is story, because that is the only thing that exists. And when you wake up, what is the very first thing that exists? Story. Wake up. This is I find this I find this statement weird. I don't know why. Maybe I used to not think about it much, but I think about it. When it comes up sometimes I hear people say it. People are asleep. They need to wake up. But what do they need to wake up to? What is the very first thing that happens when you wake up? Can you name it as the only thing that exists? Can you give it a title? The very first thing that happens when you woke up or when you wake up. And that would be story. Imagine that. You don't imagine it because it happens. It's the only thing that exists, story, and nothing can prove story doesn't exist. So I don't get hung up on this word, people need to wake up or people are sleeping, because the only thing that you ever woke up to, or the only thing that I ever wake up to, is the only thing that exists. Story. Have you have you have you ever woken up and gone, ooh, where am I? What day is it? What time is it? You know, had to gather your, we say, oh, you had to gather your thoughts. You're gathering story, aren't you? You're not gathering story. Story gathers, doesn't matter. It's all over the place. If I say it gathers story, it makes sense. It doesn't make sense because guess what I'm using? The only thing that exists. Story. Yep. We could have a conversation right now and it would be brilliant to talk and converse. And isn't it amazing that while you're talking, you can actually story a story while you're having a conversation? As an example, I'm talking now, but there's a story appearing from where the hell it does, I don't know, and why it can't work itself out. Where did story decide that there was a mind doing the storying? Isn't that just unbelievable? Hey? Like, does other things or do other things have minds? Yeah, right. They do, don't they? If you use the story mind, you could really think about other things that have a mind. I mean, even a little flea would have or a fly, something bigger. A mosquito does it have a mind of its own? Does it story? Does it wake up and go, need to go and stick this thing into something? Seems to happen quite naturally, doesn't it? Even these words that I'm speaking now seem to just spill out quite naturally. It's not like I've selected 26 letters from the alphabet, joined them up into a certain sequence, created a word that has a token up against it and a pattern, which then works out the next letter and the next word after that word, letter, whatever is going to happen next, and then I spill it out. No, it seems to flow quite fluently all by itself. From where? I don't know. Because even AI will tell you it doesn't know where its story comes from. It's just a sequence of events, isn't it? I think I let it slip the other day when I said when I was talking about we're trained and the thing that trains us is story, and because that would be story is the only thing that exists, so it's the only thing available to train us with. Imagine training us without story. Yeah, righto. Even saying training without story is the story of training without story. It's inescapable. Anyway, I think I said it's just a train of story, but, you know, it could be just a chain of stories. Oh, sorry, that's right. I said it's a train of events. Training. It's a train of events. It's like a chain of events. Yeah, unbelievable. Yes, it is quite incredible that the only thing that exists, story. take a look around, and if you use the term, oh, they're not awake, look at those sheep over there. They're still asleep, or they're still a sheep. Well, no, they're not sheep and they're not asleep. They just they just story. That's all. That's all there is. It's the only thing that exists. Now, when oh, I don't need to go on about when you woke up, because the very first thing that you came, the very first thing that is the only thing that is, and that's story. No, people aren't sheep and they aren't asleep. They just story, because story is the only thing that exists. And even we talk about the politicians doing this and politicians doing that. Yeah, sure, whatever. It's pretty, I'm not going to say words, I'm not going to get political about it, but it is the only thing that exists. I mean, even what they are is the only thing that exists. What they are under, what they are, is the only thing that exists. Story. Without story, where would they be? They would wake up to nothing. No, nothing wakes up to nothing. And if you try to tell me there's something that wakes up to nothing, that is the story saying there's a waking up to nothing. It's inescapable. It's unbelievable. It's very simple. It's very ordinary. And it's the only thing that you can it's the only thing. That's it. There's no sheep people. There's no sleeping people. There's no people that are even awake. There is just the only thing that exists the moment that you're not asleep, the moment that you appear to be awake, and that is story. It's the only thing that exists, I'm telling you, because the only way I can tell you is to use it. And you can tell me the complete opposite, or you can tell me a complete another story. Go on, you can tell me another story. But that is another what? I just said it. Another story. I think sometimes it gives itself away. There was a movie out some time ago, many years ago, and I think it was called The Greatest Story Ever Told. Wouldn't it be better if it was something other than a story to call it the greatest thing?